Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to dive into something fascinating. Today, we're exploring baby-led weaning, where we ditch the purees and let babies explore food on their own WN terms.
I'm excited to dig into this. It's a topic that's both fascinating and, for a lot of parents, maybe a little bit intimidating.
Absolutely. It definitely challenges some of those traditional ideas about what babies can handle, and that's part of what makes it so interesting. We're diving into this with a great article from The New Yorker, When Babies Rule the Dinner Table, which follows several families on this journey.
Oh, I love that article. It really captures the joys and, let's be honest, the messes that come with letting babies take charge of their food.
Totally. It's full of messy kitchens, skeptical grandparents, A&D babies happily chowing down on everything from sardines to scallops. It's amazing. Speaking of those preconceived notions, think about baby food for a second. What image pops into your head?
Honestly,
Yeah,
probably those little jars of mush.
yeah,
The ones with the single ingredient and the bland color.
exactly. And this article points to Dr. Holt, a hugely influential childcare expert in the late 1800s, as a major force behind that image.
I did not know that. But thinking back to what I know about that area, it kind of makes sense.
Right, like his book championed blandness,
hmm
rule beef juice, no lumps or bumps allowed. He even called omelets objectionable for babies. Can you believe it?
Wow, omelets. That does seem a bit extreme. But I guess back then the emphasis was on safety and strict nutritional control, maybe even at the expense of, well, flavor and a baby's natural inclination to explore.
And that's a stark contrast to the baby-led weaning movement we're seeing today. It throws out those old rules and says, hey, babies can handle this. And the New Yorker article really highlights that with the families they follow, these babies are digging into some seriously impressive meals.
It's amazing what babies are capable of when we give them the chance. What's fascinating to me is that baby-led weaning isn't just about letting babies get messy. It taps into their innate curiosity and desire for autonomy.
I love that. It's like instead of treating them as passive recipients of mush, we're recognizing them as capable little humans who want to explore the world, food included.
Exactly. Think about it. Babies are wired to explore the world around them, and food is no exception. This approach lets them do just that, using all their senses. Touch, taste, smell, the whole sensory experience.
Absolutely. There's this great anecdote in the article about a 10-month-old named Addie who just devours a piece of bulgogi, this flavorful Korean marinated beef. Her mom wanted her to grow up experiencing those flavors, and it clearly resonated with Addie.
And that speaks to a crucial point. Early exposure to diverse flavors has been linked to more adventurous eating habits later in life. It's like opening up a whole world of culinary possibilities for them right from the start.
Now, I know what some listeners might be thinking right now, because it's the question that always comes up with baby-led weaning. What about choking?
Right, because seeing your baby gag can be terrifying,
Mm-hmm.
but it's actually a good thing, isn't it?
That's what the article emphasizes, that
Mhm.
there's a critical distinction between gagging, which is a natural reflex, and actual choking.
Exactly. Babies are actually less likely to choke with baby-led weaning because they develop those oral motor skills earlier by handling food, learning to move it around in their mouths, and manage different textures.
So it's almost counterintuitive. By allowing them to explore, we're actually helping them develop the skills to eat safely. But I have to admit, even knowing all that, this approach does come with a trade-off. Be prepared for some serious mess.
Oh, absolutely. The article even jokingly suggested getting a dog just for cleanup duty.
Right, they weren't wrong. It definitely requires a shift in mindset. We're going from perfectly portioned purees to embracing a bit of chaos.
Exactly. Baby-led weaning is about trusting your baby's cues. You decide what they eat, but they decide how much.
And speaking of trusting your baby, this article takes us to what I'd call the gourmet end of the baby-led weaning spectrum.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more.
There's this little guy, Levi, whose dad whips up restaurant-quality meals for him. Seared scallops, oxtail with jicama slaw, even salmon Wellington.
Wow, salmon Wellington, that's some next-level baby food.
Yeah.
But, Levi's story, while aspirational, highlights a beautiful aspect of baby-led weaning. It can transform mealtime into an experience of shared joy and connection, not just a feeding frenzy.
And isn't that what we all want? To raise kids who have a healthy and happy relationship with food, it's not just about sustenance, it's about creating those positive associations.
Precisely. It's about fostering a love for food that goes beyond the basic need to eat. And I think that's something baby-led weaning does really well.
Totally. This idea of fostering, of nurturing a love for food instead of forcing it really resonates with me. It seems to be at the heart of this whole baby-led weaning approach.
Absolutely. It's a fundamental shift from a more controlling approach to one that empowers babies to become active participants in their own food journey.
And that empowerment, that sense of agency, it seems to extend beyond the high chair. Like maybe this is about more than just food. Maybe it impacts other aspects of their development.
You've hit on a key point. By trusting babies to explore and make choices with food, we're essentially laying the foundation for their overall independence and self-reliance.
It's like we're saying, we trust you to listen to your body and make good choices, even from this early age.
Exactly. And that message, that underlying message of trust and respect, can have a profound impact on their development.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as letting a baby feed themselves can have such far-reaching implications.
It's a testament to the power of observing our children's natural abilities and creating an environment where they can thrive, even if it means a little more mess to clean up.
Well said. Now, before we get too caught up in the philosophical implications of baby-led weaning, let's dive into some practical tips and address some common concerns that parents have. Because, let's be real, while the idea of raising a little foodie is appealing, the reality of those messy mealtimes can be a bit daunting.
Absolutely. It's all about finding a balance between embracing the chaos and setting realistic expectations.
Exactly. And speaking of expectations, the article also touches on a topic that I know a lot of parents worry about. Picky eating. Is it inevitable? Is it a sign of bad parenting? Or is there a different way to view this common childhood phase?
Those are all great questions and ones that I think a lot of us grapple with. Thankfully, the article offers some refreshing perspectives on picky eating that might help alleviate some of that parental anxiety.
I'm all ears. Because let's face it, even with the best intentions, sometimes our kids just refuse to eat what we put in front of them.
It can be incredibly frustrating. But what if, instead of viewing picky eating as a battle of wills, we saw it as a sign of our children's developing palates and their emerging sense of self?
I love that perspective because it's true, their tastes are constantly evolving just like they are.
Precisely. It's about recognizing that their preferences might differ from ours, and that's okay.
So instead of forcing them to eat everything on their plate, maybe it's more about providing a variety of options and trusting that they'll eventually find what they like.
Exactly. It's about creating a positive and pressure-free environment around food where they feel comfortable exploring and experimenting without fear of judgment.
And that goes back to what we were talking about earlier about trusting our baby's instincts and giving them the space to figure things out at their own pace.
Absolutely. It's about recognizing that they are capable individuals with their own unique preferences, and our role is to support and guide them, not dictate their every bite.
And who knows, maybe by giving them that freedom, we might even learn a thing or two about our own relationship with food.
I love that. Because it's true, sometimes we can get so caught up in the shoulds and shouldn'ts of eating that we forget to simply enjoy the experience.
It's like we need to tap into that childlike sense of wonder and curiosity when it comes to food, that willingness to try new things and not be afraid to get a little messy in the process.
Well said. It's about rediscovering the joy of food, the simple pleasure of exploring new flavors and textures, and remembering that food is meant to be savored, not stressed over.
I love that sentiment. And what better way to rediscover that joy than through the eyes of a baby who is experiencing the world of food for the first time?
It's a magical thing to witness, isn't it? That pure, unadulterated delight in discovering a new flavor or texture.
It really is. And it's a good reminder for all of us to approach mealtimes with a little more fun and a little less pressure.
Absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's not about achieving some perfect ideal of baby-led weaning. It's about creating positive experiences around food that will last a lifetime.
Well said. And speaking of creating positive experiences, let's take a quick break and then come back to explore some practical tips and advice for parents who are interested in trying baby-led weaning. All right, so we're back, and I'm still thinking about that idea of approaching mealtimes with a little more fun and a little less pressure.
It's definitely a shift in mindset, but it can be so liberating both for parents and babies.
Totally. But for those of us who are used to the more traditional approach to baby food, where do we even begin with baby-led weaning?
That's a great question, and thankfully it's not as complicated as you might think. One of the first things to consider is timing.
Okay, so when is the right time to start thinking about this?
Most experts recommend starting around 6 months of age, when babies typically start showing signs of readiness for solid foods.
So things like being able to sit up with support, having good head control, showing an interest in food, that kind of thing.
Exactly. And in terms of what to feed them, it's actually much simpler than you might imagine. Forget those elaborate purees and multi-step recipes. We're talking about real, whole foods that are easy to grasp and gum.
So things like steamed broccoli flores, strips of avocado, even a soft piece of chicken.
You got it. The key is to offer foods that are soft enough to gum, but firm enough to hold their shape.
What about portion sizes? Do we need to be meticulously measuring out tiny bites?
That's the beauty of baby-led weaning. You can ditch the measuring spoons, start with one or two different foods at a time, cut or mashed into manageable pieces, and let your baby decide how much they want to eat.
So we're really putting them in the driver's seat, letting them dictate the pace and the portion size.
Exactly. It's about trusting their internal cues and letting them guide the process.
Now, I know some parents might be hesitant to give their baby a whole piece of food, especially when they're just starting out.
Oh, absolutely.
Any tips for making those first few meals a little less, anxiety-inducing?
Absolutely. One tip is to start with foods that are naturally soft and gummable, like ripe bananas, steamed sweet potatoes, or even strips of well-cooked pasta.
So things that are almost impossible to choke on, even if they're not quite mastered the art of chewing yet.
Exactly. Another helpful tip is to offer foods in a variety of shapes and sizes. This allows babies to practice their grasping skills and figure out how to get the food to their mouths.
That makes sense. It's
Yeah.
like giving them a little puzzle to solve, which, let's be honest, babies love to do.
And as they get the hang of things, you can gradually introduce foods with more texture and challenge, like minced meats, shredded cheeses, or even small pieces of soft fruit, like melon or mango.
It's amazing to think about how much their motor skills and coordination are developing during this stage, all through the simple act of eating.
It really is. And it's not just their physical development that benefits from this approach. Baby-led weaning also encourages cognitive development and problem-solving skills.
It's like they're constantly learning and adapting, figuring out new ways to navigate the world around them all through the lens of food.
Precisely. It's a holistic approach to feeding that nourishes their bodies and minds simultaneously.
It's funny, we often think of feeding as this very basic need, but it's so much more than that, isn't it? It's about connection, exploration, and learning, all rolled into one.
Absolutely. It's a chance for babies to engage with their senses, explore different tastes and textures, and develop a positive relationship with food from the very beginning.
And speaking of developing a positive relationship with food, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on another aspect of baby-led weaning that often comes up, the mess factor.
Ah, yes, the inevitable mess. It's definitely something that every parent embarking on this journey needs to be prepared for.
Because, let's be real, it's not for the faint of heart. But I'm guessing there are ways to embrace the chaos without letting it completely take over our lives.
Absolutely. One of the best things you can do is adjust your expectations. Embrace the fact that meal times will be messy, and that's okay.
It's about shifting our perspective from striving for picture-perfect plates to celebrating the joy of discovery and exploration.
Exactly. And there are practical things you can do to contain the mess, like using a splat mat or a high chair with a tray, dressing your baby in clothes you don't mind getting dirty, and having a damp cloth handy for quick cleanups.
Those are all great tips. And sometimes I think it's helpful to remember that this messy phase is just that, a phase. It won't last forever.
That's so true. And as babies get older and more adept at self-feeding, the mess will naturally subside.
And in the meantime, we can try to find humor in the chaos, right? Those messy faces and sticky fingers are all part of the fun.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Embrace the silliness of it all, and remember that these are the moments you'll look back on and cherish, even if they did involve a bit of extra cleanup.
Well said. And speaking of cherishing these moments, let's talk about the social and emotional benefits of baby-led weaning. Because it's not just about the food itself, is it?
Absolutely not. Mealtimes are an incredible opportunity for connection and bonding. And baby-led weaning can actually enhance that connection in several ways.
I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
Well, for starters, when babies are in charge of their own food intake, it creates a more relaxed and enjoyable atmosphere at the table.
It takes the pressure off of parents to spoon feed and coerce every bite, which can often lead to power struggles and frustration.
Exactly. And when mealtimes are more relaxed, it allows for more genuine interaction and connection between parents and babies.
Instead of focusing on getting food into their mouths, we can relax, enjoy our own meal, and engage with our babies in a more natural and meaningful way.
Precisely. It creates space for eye contact, smiles, and those sweet moments of shared enjoyment that are so crucial for bonding.
And it's not just about the parent-child bond either, right? Baby-led weaning can also foster a sense of community and belonging around the table.
Absolutely. When babies are included in family meals, eating the same foods as everyone else, it creates a sense of togetherness and shared experience.
It's like they're being welcomed into the family fold, not just as passive recipients of food, but as active participants in this cherished ritual.
Exactly. And that sense of belonging, of being part of something bigger than themselves, can have a profound impact on their social and emotional development.
It's amazing to think that something as simple as letting a baby feed themselves can have such far-reaching implications, not just for their physical health and development, but for their emotional well-being and their sense of place within the family.
It really speaks to the power of mindful feeding, of approaching mealtimes with intention and awareness, and recognizing the profound impact they can have on our children's overall development.
And that brings us to a really important question. How can we, as parents, cultivate that sense of mindfulness and intention around mealtimes, especially in today's fast-paced world where distractions are abundant?
That's such a crucial question, and one that I think a lot of us grapple with. Thankfully, there are several simple yet powerful things we can do to create a more mindful and enjoyable mealtime experience for both ourselves and our children.
I'm all ears. Because let's be real, between work, school, extracurricular activities, and just the general busyness of life, finding that sense of peace and presence at the dinner table can feel like a Herculean task.
It definitely takes effort, but the rewards are well worth it. One of the simplest yet most effective things we can do is create a dedicated space for meals, free from distractions like screens, toys, and even excessive background noise.
So, turning off the TV, putting away our phones, and maybe even dimming the lights to create a more calming and inviting ambiance.
Exactly. And once you've created that dedicated space, it's important to establish a regular mealtime routine as much as possible.
So, having meals at roughly the same time each day, even if it's just breakfast or dinner, to provide a sense of predictability and structure.
Precisely. And when it's time to eat, encourage everyone to slow down and savor each bite. Put down your forks between bites, engage in conversation, and really focus on the flavors and textures of the food.
It's about shifting our mindset from simply fueling our bodies to engaging in a more mindful and enjoyable sensory experience.
Absolutely. And don't forget to involve your children in the process as much as possible.
So things like letting them help choose fruits and vegetables at the grocery store, assisting with age-appropriate tasks in the kitchen, or even setting the table.
Exactly. When children feel like they're part of the process, it not only makes them more invested in meal times, but it also creates valuable learning opportunities and fosters a sense of responsibility.
It's amazing how something as simple as setting the table can teach children about teamwork, responsibility, and the importance of contributing to a shared experience.
It's a beautiful thing to witness. And the more we can involve our children in these everyday rituals, the more likely they are to develop a healthy and positive relationship with food.
Well said. And speaking of developing a healthy relationship with food, let's shift gears a bit and address a topic that often causes anxiety for parents of babies and toddlers alike: picky eating.
Ah, yes.
Because let's be real, even with the best intentions and the most mindful approach to feeding, there's a good chance our little ones will go through phases of refusing certain foods, trying our patience, and leaving us wondering if we're doing something wrong.
You're absolutely right. Picky eating is an incredibly common and often frustrating phase that most parents experience at some point.
It's like no matter how hard we try to create a positive and adventurous eating environment, our kids seem determined to subsist solely on bread crusts and chicken nuggets.
It can be incredibly perplexing. But the good news is that picky eating is usually a normal part of development, and there are things we can do to navigate this phase with a little more grace and a lot less stress.
I'm all ears. Because I think most parents have been there, staring at a plate of untouched food, wondering where we went wrong.
You're definitely not alone.
Yeah.
And one of the most important things to remember is that picky eating is often a way for young children to exert their independence and establish their own preferences.
It's like their way of saying, hey, I'm a separate person with my own likes and dislikes, and I'm not afraid to let you know.
Exactly. And as frustrating as it can be, it's important to respect their autonomy and avoid turning meal times into a battle of wills.
Because, let's be honest, forcing a child to eat something they don't want to usually ends in tears, tantrums, and a whole lot of resentment.
You're absolutely right. It's far more effective to approach picky eating with patience, understanding, and a few simple strategies.
So instead of forcing, we need to find ways to encourage and entice without pressuring.
Precisely. And one of the best ways to do this is to continue offering a variety of healthy foods, even if your child has refused them in the past.
So not giving up on broccoli just because they pushed it away yesterday.
Exactly. It can take multiple exposures to a new food before a child is willing to try it.
It's like they need to become familiar with its appearance, smell, and texture before they're ready to give it a taste.
You got it. And another helpful tip is to make meal times fun and engaging.
So instead of just plopping a plate of food in front of them, we can get creative with presentation, involve them in the preparation process, or even turn mealtime into a game.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
don't underestimate the power of positive reinforcement.
So praising them when they try something new, even if it's just a tiny beat.
Absolutely. Even the smallest victories deserve to be celebrated.
And it's important to remember that every child is different, and what works for one child might not work for another.
That's so true. There's no one-size-fits-all approach to feeding, and what matters most is finding what works best for your child and your family.
Well said. And sometimes that might mean seeking professional help from a pediatrician or a registered dietitian if you're concerned about your child's growth or eating habits.
Absolutely. There's no shame in asking for help, and a qualified professional can provide personalized guidance and support.
And on that note of seeking support, let's shift gears a bit and talk about some of those common myths and misconceptions surrounding baby-led weaning that can sometimes make parents hesitant to give it a try.
It's amazing how much misinformation is out there.
It really is. So let's clear the air and debunk some of those baby-led weaning myths.
Okay, I'm ready. What's the first one on the list?
Well, one I hear a lot is that baby-led weaning automatically leads to nutrient deficiencies.
Yeah, that's a big one.
Because, we're ditching those carefully measured purees and letting babies graze on whatever catches their fancy. So naturally, some parents worry, are they getting enough of everything they need?
It's a valid concern, but here's the thing. Studies have actually shown that babies who engage in baby-led weaning often have a more diverse nutrient intake in the long run.
Really? So it kind of has the opposite effect.
Exactly. Think about it. They're exposed to a wider variety of foods from the get-go, so they're more likely to get a broader range of nutrients over time.
That makes sense when you put it that way. It's like we're setting them up for success, not just in terms of nutrition, but also in their overall relationship with food.
Absolutely. And another myth I hear a lot is that baby-led weaning is only for super laid-back parents who don't mind a mess.
Yeah, I can see that. Because the image of a baby covered in spaghetti sauce might not scream relaxing to everyone.
Right. But here's the thing. Embracing the mess doesn't mean sacrificing your sanity. It's about finding what works for you and your family.
So finding those little strategies and tricks to contain the chaos, right?
Exactly. Maybe that means laying down a slat mat, stripping your baby down to their diaper, or even taking meal times outside on occasion.
Whatever it takes.
Right. And remember, the mess is temporary, but the skills and confidence your baby gains from self-feeding are priceless.
Well said. Now, one last myth I want to address. That baby-led weaning is just a fad, a passing trend in the parenting world. But it seems like it's more than that, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely. If anything, it's a return to a more intuitive and instinctual way of feeding babies. Think about it. For centuries, before commercially prepared baby food became the norm, babies simply ate what their families ate.
It's true. It was a more communal, family-centered approach to feeding.
Exactly. And there's a growing body of research to support the benefits of this approach, both for babies' physical development and their long-term eating habits.
So it's not just a fad, it's a philosophy backed by science and tradition.
Exactly. And while every family needs to decide what approach feels right for them, baby-led weaning offers a compelling alternative to the traditional puree then solids model.
It's about trusting our babies, embracing their natural abilities, and letting them lead the way on their food journey.
And what could be more empowering than that?
This has been such an eye-opening deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise on baby-led weaning.
It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
And for our listeners, if you're considering baby-led weaning, be sure to check out that New Yorker article we mentioned, When Babies Rule the Dinner Table. It's full of insightful advice, inspiring stories, and even a few laughs along the way. That's all for our deep dive into baby-led weaning. Thanks for joining us.